Welcome everybody to another episode of the Haunted Vermont podcast. My name is Paul Doski, and joining me today is none other than a local author who have been collecting stories for 30 plus years. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Joe.
Something like that, yeah, I don't know. Back in the Jurassic Age, that's when I started.
Yeah, I know it's been a while, and so basically, we got Joe Citro. Joe, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say, first off, thank you for the opportunity of talking with you. And for those that are watching, this is actually a re-recording of me because the original project of me doing this with Joe kind of went south. My equipment failed, and to say the editing process wasn't so fun, so here I am re-recording myself. So without further ado, I just wanted to say real quick that when Joe, when we were talking before we went and started this, we were talking about back when you started, you were using like a cassette tape for interviews. Do you want to talk to us about that, because you ended up switching from cassettes to your phone now?
Well, I mean, when I started interviewing people, I was using tape recorders, cassettes. Remember those? Yeah, those are the things that came right after 8 tracks. Yeah, and then I started to use my phone, so that all the tapes are in storage. I've got some great interviews on tape, and I'm hoping that when I play them again, they'll still be there. I've got a whole series of interviews with Ed and Lorraine Warren, and I was thinking about writing a book about my period of time with them. Not sure if I'll get to that. I have to weigh the number of books I want to write with the number of years I'm likely to have left, but they're in the line somewhere. I have a big file of Warren-related material, and plenty of material to work with. But it's all going to depend on whether I can put those tapes into, if I can find a tape player and put those cassettes in it and get the material off the cassettes. I don't know. I don't know what the lifespan of a cassette is, but now I'm using my phone. And I can move the audio recording from the phone onto my computer and just work with it there. It's so much easier now. And that's it. I'm not doing anywhere near as much interviewing as I used to do, but the whole process of interviewing and transcribing interviews, it becomes so much easier. So welcome to the 21st century.
Yeah, it makes me wonder, for those that may not know what a VCR is, that I wonder if it would act the same way as like a cassette tape, where like the longer you use a VCR tape, I wonder with the amount of rewinding and playing, it wears it down and kind of rips and tears at the tape. Whereas I wonder if it goes the same effect as the cassette tape, as it kind of, wears and tears it.
We'll find out. All the interviews, I mean, some of them I've already transcribed and used in books that have already been published, but I've got a lot of unpublished material from just collecting stories. This whole process started as simply collecting stories. I wasn't investigating, I wasn't trying to do scientific analysis of mysterious phenomena. I was just collecting stories, and nobody's ever done that. Well, I don't mean people have collected stories, but no one in Vermont has ever collected and published Vermont's weird tales. I was the first to do it, and when I realized that, I developed a real sense of mission about it. I got to keep collecting. But what I learned is I'm not going to get them all. I got a lot of stories, a lot that had never been collected before. But I learned at the same time that I'm not going to get them all. There's ones I haven't found. I keep finding them. I got to pass the torch to somebody. I don't know who. Maybe you.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say to that, Joe. Passing the torch to me. I mean, I would not want to let you down, and I would hope I would be the correct person to do it. That's for sure, and I appreciate that. You know, it's funny because I grew up skeptical about this, where if it wasn't for the weird events that happened when I was younger, to want to, you know, do like what Ghost Hunter did on the show, which is like debunk, try to find some logic, information, and, you know, rattling pipes, you know, just normal house sounds per se, versus something paranormal. So that's what me and my buddy would do. We wanted to try to crack it down, but when we could find no reason for the events, it was like, well, what else could it be? But in the end, it's more about trying to find an outcome of what is going on around you per se, and I think that's what keeps the experiment alive, is because you want to know, you want to learn. That way, you're gaining knowledge of this, but you're also, you know, you're preparing yourself for these weird questions that maybe other people don't know how to look at it, because maybe they're just getting into the subject, or they're just want somebody else to maybe validate what they've been going through, and that way it basically signifies a way to just strengthen their mind as well.
Yeah, it's probably I've never had a lot of what could be called mystical experiences or whatever. I've never had many, if any. But I suspect it's sort of like having a chronic illness. It's just something you got to get used to. You got to live with it and make friends with it if you can. You know, people always ask me when I do readings and public readings or lectures or something like that, if I've ever had any weird experiences, and not really. I've had some semi-weird experiences, but nothing really dramatic. I'm not coming to this work from the point of view of being an experiencer. I'm not. I'm coming to this work because I like stories. And before I was collecting Vermont stories, I was writing fiction about Vermont. So the evolution is almost obvious. I moved from writing fiction based on Vermont history and lore to just doing only the fiction and just collecting the stories. And that's as far as I go. I'm not an investigator. I'm not a researcher. I'm not a scientist or anthropologist or even a legitimate folklorist. I'm just a collector of stories. And I'm not ever going to be able to collect them all. I think of myself sort of like Abby Hemingway, the woman who tried to write the history of Vermont, town by town, and she made that her life's work. Sort of like that. I'm collecting the stories. That's it. Collector. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we can talk about this because you have mentioned it a few times, which is your visit to St. Michael's College. You went there and you were investigating, checking out the attic, which supposedly had like the carved or some sort of melted wax of a pentagram on the floor. You did that with a few times, maybe once. Anyway, what can you tell us about that experience, especially with the attic?
Yeah, that's kind of ancient history, really. There was a story on St. Michael's College that an exorcism had been performed on the campus, and because it's a Catholic school, because there's a lot of priests there, it was reasonable to believe that among the various rites, there might have been the rite of exorcism. And the story was that there were some students who were practicing, I guess, satanic arts or something like that in the attic of one of the buildings. And that they had actually summoned something, and it scared the hell out of them. And then the priests went in and sealed the attic after having performed their various ceremonies to banish whatever it is that was summoned. I looked into that, and I found some witness testimony, and I also was permitted to enter the closed-off attic of St. Mike's and to look around up there. I was very, very skeptical. My first walk around did not reveal any pentagram on the floor of the attic. But when I looked more carefully, I did see some wax that sort of started to outline what might have been a pentagram. It wasn't enough evidence to actually reconstruct the diagram or the pentagram, but there was something there. There was some evidence that somebody had at least been burning candles up there. Now, I don't know if that's enough to jump to summoning a demon, to having an exorcism, to having the attic closed off. I don't know if it's just a story, if it's a story based on a fragment of something that was true, or if it's all just, balderdash and just another scary story. There are a lot of weird things that went on at St. Mike's, and I know one of them had to do with a ghostly nun that would appear occasionally to people who were in distress for one reason or another and try to comfort and calm them down. I talked to one guy. He's not given me permission to use his name, so I won't. But he was an actor who was at St. Mike's. He wasn't a student there, but he was an actor that was there during summer theater. And he was upset about something, and he was sitting by himself outside on a bench. And this nun came up and comforted him, and she was very nice, and it was all very pleasant, and he felt better after interacting with her, and later found that when he tried to find her again, and she wasn't there. There were no nuns living there. It was apparently the same sister that kept appearing to different people who were in distress. This guy was very convincing, and he was very convinced that he had, in fact, had that conversation. So, who am I to say he didn't?
That's interesting. You mentioned like a nun showing up for this person or people. Kind of reminds me of like Mount St. Joseph MSJ High School here in Rutland. Yeah, in Rutland. And basically, it's either from former students, staff, or maybe janitor or something involving like maybe the theater aspect of like the stage. But from what I hear, when they encounter this nun at MSJ, it's really not pleasant. It's like they're mad or like she's mad. I've heard there's sometimes one or multiple nuns showing up at MSJ. I don't know if that would be something similar.
I've heard about it, and you think that if there are ghosts, that Catholic schools, churches, Protestant and Catholic, would be places you'd see spirits. You'd think, but I found that for the most part, anything associated with the church keeps pretty quiet about any seemingly supernatural activity that might go on. And yes, I've heard that there's supposedly a ghostly nun at Mount Mount St. Joseph's. I've heard that, but I've not looked into it at all. I've not ever talked to anybody that claims to have seen that nun, but I know the story is out there, and I suspect there are similar stories in most religious buildings and institutions, but who knows? It's hard to get at them. It's hard to get at those stories, and it's very hard, particularly among Catholics, I guess, to get at the exorcism stories. They don't like to talk about those too much, I guess. So and I'm not too interested in them, actually, so I don't really go after them very aggressively.
Yeah, and it's kind of like in the last decade, or maybe in the past like 6 years or so, I feel like it's actually harder now for people to come out with their stories or encounters. And I don't know if you come across it, Joe, but I find it that it's very hard to get people to talk. And I don't know if that's because we have lost places that have either been shut down, torn down, or maybe they just don't want the mentioning of them supposedly having a ghost. And I can name a few places like that, but I'm not going to. But one place I will mention for sort of like an example would be the Silas Griffith Inn that it was in Danby, and I'm saying was because unfortunately it was ran down sort of to the ground. I don't know if it ever got demolished, but like back in that time frame when Silas Griffith Inn was around, you know, you would hear about it's haunted in the newspapers. It would be welcoming to group to stay the night. I remember reaching out one time and the owner gave me like the entries of what guests have reported to have had happen to them while staying at the inn. So it's almost like a ghost log book in a way. So I mean, I don't know. It's weird.
I would feel just the opposite, really. I think people are eager to talk about ghosts, and I think it's when I started doing this research, ghosts were more in the closet than they are now. I remember I had heard about a few inns or hotels in Vermont that had ghost stories attached. And I remember approaching them by phone, I think, and just, you know, I heard there was a ghost story attached to your hotel. You want to tell me about it? No ghosts here. Now, there's been a real cultural shift that embraces the paranormal, and a lot of inns and hotels and B&Bs are advertising that they have ghosts. In fact, right here in Windsor, there's a newly opened B&B, the theme of which is ghosts. I think we've seen the rise of paranormal tourism. These ghost hunting groups that hop from location to location and look for ghosts and pay to do so. It's very much an integral part of the culture now, it seems to me. And it seems to me that these ghost hunting groups, paranormal groups or whatever they're called, are kind of 21st century versions of 19th century seances. The ghost hunting groups they go into houses and say, is anybody there? In the same way that the spiritualists in the 19th century would sit around a table in a dark room and say, is anybody there? Same thing. It's evident on television the amount of paranormal programming there is, not just fiction, but lots and lots of non-fiction programs about ghost stories and looking for cryptids and so forth. celebrities meet ghosts, that kind of thing. It's everywhere. We're saturated with it. I think because of that, ghost stories are losing some of their allure because they've become so much a part of the popular culture now. But who knows? I think it's easier to get people to talk about it. When I do, you've been to some of my presentations when I do readings and stuff. People are very quick to volunteer their stories in a public forum. So I don't know. It may be harder to locate new stuff.
All right, Joe. Well, before we end it, I just want to say thank you again for your time with this and just allowing me to do this with you. And basically, like everybody wants to know, is what is Joe Citro planning for the upcoming months? What do you got going on?
Well, I got a few things coming up. I have had some re-releases of this year of my novel, The Gore. Came out earlier this year, and just a few days ago, brand new edition of my novel, Guardian Angels, came out. So those are hot off the press again. And I've just got the proof copy of this book. This is kind of a change of pace. It's a collection of short stories called False Memories and Eldritch Interludes, and it's beautifully illustrated by Corey Furman, who I worked with before. He did the cover and interior illustrations of my novel Shadow Child, and we worked together on this one. But what this does, this is kind of it's called False Memories because the thesis of the book really is that short stories, short fiction, are in fact memories that have been distorted and mutated and manipulated. But all the fiction comes from memories. And so the short stories in this book, each one is followed by an essay that explains where the story came from, what inspired it, and in some cases what happened as a result of the publication. Like at least in one case, I was attacked really and put in physical danger because of the story. So it's kind of a contemplation. It's the story and the story of the story. and it includes my first published short story and the first short story I ever sold are in there. So there's some pretty arcane historic stuff in there. And I've not announced this publicly before, so you're the first to get word on this. But the book I'm working on now, and I have no idea when I'll finish it, it's going to be my fall and winter project, is the story of all the people who were executed in Vermont. Murders and executions. And I get the idea for that because when I go out walking, I walk by the state prison, the closed state prison. And I got to thinking, my God, I'm walking by a place that A, should be very haunted, and B, a lot of people were killed here. They were killed here. And I'm going to tell the story of each one, what he or she did, and why they were executed, and a little bit of information about the executions. So that's a very big change of pace. It's way, way outside the supernatural realm. And that's what I'm up to. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you so much, Joe, for your time again. And for everybody else listening, don't forget you can always check out Joe Citro on Facebook currently by just typing in Joseph Citro and following him on Facebook for all the upcoming Joe Citro needs. And if you have a story, whether it's inside the Green Mountains or beyond, please reach out to us. We would love to hear from you, whether it's online or offline, because in the end, together we can learn.